Before we begin, I want to take a moment to gently frame this conversation because today's episode touches on themes of betrayal, deception, emotional manipulation, and identity disruption. If you're listening and notice activation or tightness or pull to check out, that makes sense because you're invited to pause and ground and just return to this episode when your system feels more ready. I want to be very clear that being deceived is not a failure of intelligence, intuition, or strength. Con artists and manipulators rely on human connection, on empathy and hope and trust, qualities that are not weaknesses, but deeply human traits. Today, I'm speaking with Heather Rovet, whose story many people may recognize. What matters here isn't just what happened, but how she navigated the aftermath, emotionally, psychologically, and somatically. Heather is an intelligent woman, a professional who was living an ordinary, full life when she became entangled in a long-term, highly sophisticated deception. Her experience later became known publicly through the podcast Betrayal and the Prime Video Amazon documentary, Who the F is Jason Porter. But let's be clear, Heather is not defined by what happened to her. She's not a victim, but a voice. As many who end up in these situations, Heather is someone who trusted, who loved, who showed up in good faith, and who then had to navigate the profound psychological, emotional, and identity level impact of realizing that the reality she was living in was not as it appeared to be. And since then, Heather is an amazing healing voice, sometimes quietly, sometimes publicly, for what betrayal trauma actually looks like beyond the headlines, the confusion, the self-questioning, the nervous system fallout, and the long road of integration and reclaiming self-trust. So today's conversation centers not on the con itself, but on who Heather is in the aftermath, how she made sense of the experience and how she healed, and what her story reveals about how and why so many intelligent, capable women are targeted and affected by this kind of deception. I'm very grateful you're here, Heather.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So I know I just said all that, but just for people who haven't seen the documentary or haven't heard the episode yet on Betrayal, can you tell us the basics of your story?
Yes. I mean, I guess my elevator speech on it would essentially be I organically met a man. Some might call it a Hollywood meet cute because I renovated my condo. And at the time, he was working for the company that did all the kitchen cabinetry and the bathroom vanities. And after the renovation was done, some things needed fixing. So he was their service guy and they sent him over. So I literally one day opened my front door and lo and behold, there he was standing there. And what started just as some fun flirtation turned into, texting, talking, and eventually a date. And that date turned into very, very quickly a romantic relationship, which lasted just over 3 years. And for the most part, things were great. I was in love. I kept going through my life. COVID happened. I was actually excited when COVID happened because I thought, this is awesome. We're going to get to spend more time together. We're locked down. And it wouldn't be until around the actual 3-year mark of our relationship that I guess from his side, the lies he had been telling were reaching their shelf life. Like he couldn't keep up the con anymore because I was starting to ask more questions and things just weren't sitting right. And it would take about another 6 weeks from this one particular incident in July that led to me discovering the entire labyrinth of lies. And so in a nutshell, the love of my life turned out to be a con man and a criminal and pretty much a psychopath. And our entire relationship behind my back, he was not only not who he claimed to be, he was born Jason Porter. And then I guess in 2014, I shouldn't say guess, in 2014, when he was released from federal prison, he changed his name to Jace Parati. But by the time I met him in 2018, he had morphed that alias into a Jace Paretti and had a very suave, tight backstory that I guess he had had enough time to perfect.
Right. Okay.
And it was pretty devastating. But when I
Yes.
learned the truth, our entire relationship had deceived me by in many, many ways, one of which he was actively our entire relationship on dating apps, not dating one or two, but multiple women, which ties into why he had been in federal prison. Because in 2012, he was all over the Canadian, like the, Greater Toronto area news dubbed the online Romeo. But he also, our entire relationship was stealing. And he managed to steal pretty much all of my mom's jewelry. Not all at once,
Wow.
but piece by piece. Yeah. I figure every time we went to visit my parents, he would go and just, help himself to something.
Mm. Were
So
you
he's
the
very
only
much
woman that charged him? Like, were you the only charges against him?
so I I'll jump to that. Like he is in jail. Like spoiler alert. Still, he's only in jail today for the crime and theft of stealing my mom's belongings. What he did to me, were no charges laid because it's not against the law, which I still can't quite wrap my head around. How when you romantically defraud someone and he did steal from me, the police just did not wouldn't press any charges on my behalf to him. So he's only in jail for stealing. He's not in jail for, you know, I know in Canada right now they are actively trying to pass coercive control as a criminal offense. I still don't even know if under that definition in the law, if what he did to me would fall under that.
Mhm.
But he does have two other outstanding sets of charges that will be going to trial, one of which is for another victim whom he was with before me. She's in the documentary. Her name is Leslie. He stole her very, very expensive Cartier watch. And I was
Yes.
able to get her the evidence we ended up hiring our own lawyer to help us get more evidence because when Jace erased the computer, a lot of the evidence got destroyed. And the Orangeville OPP just doesn't have the means to, I guess, do deep investigation dives. Like they did do a good job on everything, but I needed more answers. So it wasn't very hard to track down. So we, with the help of our lawyer, got some more information, which led to her being able to have him finally arrested many years later. And he's also got these other charges outstanding, which include obstruction of justice and jury tampering. So in the documentary, there's that scene where I'm standing outside in the court and it's freezing cold because it's January 2024 and the trial was supposed to start. And the documentary actually hadn't even been completely greenlit then. We were still in paid development, but they wanted to catch the Jace coming to court and my reaction, which they did. And as luck would have it, that day that the trial was supposed to start, his lawyer was sick. So when you watch the documentary, you see me standing outside going like, where's everyone going? What's going on? And it turned out everyone got sent home because his lawyer was sick, which gave Jace a day and a half to go plot and scheme and figure out what he can do because he saw the camera crew and he was probably crapping his pants.
Oh,
So
okay.
2 days later, when court readjourned, all of a sudden, miraculously, Jace showed up in the courtroom having found all these flyers throughout the court parking lot, apparently. And the flyers basically implicated me for jury tampering. But that led to a whole new investigation, which led to these new charges, which the OPP detective has told me are very serious, more so than crime and theft. So that trial still has to come down. I think it's set to start in September 2026. That's how backed up everything is.
Yeah.
And yeah, so, unlike his other victims throughout his life, when the relationship ends, most of the women get the suicide attempt. He calls and they'll say, I'm going to drink bleach. I can't live without you. I'm going to kill myself. But I get threats of being arrested because, that day with the flyer day when the trial and everything got adjourned, I had to go give a statement to the OPP. And I felt like I was the one being punished. And then there was another time in the very beginning when I discovered the truth, the night of the 911 call that you hear in the documentary, that night he told the police that the reason he hadn't been coming home was that the month before we had had a big fight and I'd assaulted him. So that night they almost arrested me for assault. And I was like, I mean, talk about betrayal, but talk about trauma to your nervous system, you know?
Yeah.
It's really hard. Night of that the first time I re-listened to the 911 call, I went back into trauma.
Yeah.
Like I was transported back to that moment and you can feel it in your whole being, in your whole body. And I have done a lot of EMDR therapy to
Oh, good.
remember
That was
those
one of my
moments.
questions.
Yeah, EMDR is it works. It definitely works, but it's not part, it's that hearing that it was still triggering. Like I
Yeah.
remember it crystal clear. Like that night,
Mhm.
it'll stay with me probably to the day I die. Like it was just a crazy, crazy, crazy night.
MDR helps compartmentalize it and put it into like a filing cabinet. I'm trained in the MDR, but I'm also trained in brain spotting. And if you ever want to try it, reach out to me because brain spotting actually releases it and rewires things so that you view it in a different lens. It's really amazing.
I don't even know
But
what that is, but I'll look it up.
so, and I'll try not to get into it because it's my passion, but it's it's very somatic. So it's the body, but also the part of the brain where the trauma is stored. So it accesses that. It's a little gentler than EMDR actually.
Mhm.
When I saw the documentary, what came up to me was like how many women, and then you had mentioned that there was even more. Do you know how many women? No,
To be honest, so the day I got in the computer and got into his emails and got into a couple of the dating apps that he was on, because he was basically on all of them, there were hundreds of women. And I started taking screenshots, and a lot of the messaging was like, oh, we're taking this offline this quickly. Like, here's my number, here's my number. So I have no idea if those women he actually met. But the story actually started with an article in Toronto Life magazine in April of 2022. So when the cops basically almost arrested me and I was forced out of my home and I felt like they were protecting him and not listening to me and they weren't going to really help me, I wanted answers. So I'm fortunate enough, my friend's neighbor is the editor at Toronto Life. So he introduced us and I told him my story. And he's like, this is a great story. We did do a story last year on an online predator, but very, some similarities, but more differences. So they gave it a thought and then they decided, yeah, we're going to we'll do your story. We just have to find a journalist. And within a week, they brought on Jane Gerster, who's a fabulous writer. And she did with the time she had, she did a deeper dive looking into his background and his, first marriage, the divorce, whatever family he defined. But even before that story came out, I had a few women before, like it became public that I was going to go public with my story. I had a few women reach out to me via Instagram. I guess somehow they looked him up and then they would see a picture of me and him and they found me and they wanted to warn me. But I also, I don't know, in Ottawa, but in Toronto, we always say like Toronto is 6 degrees of separation. Everybody kind of is connected. I had a friend who I hadn't talked to in a while, and I was talking to her one day, telling her about my story. And I said, there's this other woman I know he was with before me, and she was a little older, and I know he stole from her, but I don't really know how to find her. As luck would have it, that friend, another mutual friend of ours from all working in the film industry years ago, happened to be childhood friends with that woman, the woman he stole the Cartier watch from.
wow.
So she connected us. That's Leslie in the documentary. And I just had lunch with her the other day. I love that woman. Like, I have made some beautiful friendships with the other victims, but it was really, I guess, with the help of Jane, the journalist, she was able to find some more victims. But then even once the story came out, it led to more people coming forward and contacting me. And so in the documentary, there's how many? There's like 5 of us, I think, but I've spoken to 10 more women.
Wow.
But on top of that, there's probably way more. And then there's all the victims from when he was Jason Porter back in 2012.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I'm going to guess there's got to be, he's probably at some, varying degrees. I think easily 50 women he's done this to on different levels. I mean, that's a big guess, but
Yeah.
I think when he was released from federal prison, he had met a woman right away on Match. That's the mother of the child who I never met. And I think
And
he realized this is
she never reached out to you or anything? No. Okay. I wondered that. Yeah.
no. So, well, here's how that went down. When I first started dating him, he talked about her and he told me her name. So of course I'm like, this is why he was so good at what he did. When I first started dating him, of course I looked up Jace Peretti. The first thing I did was Google him, and there was nothing that really came up except maybe a LinkedIn profile. He didn't even really use
Right.
Facebook much back then. And I asked him like why, and he said, "Oh, like I'm just low key on social media," and that's believable. I have a couple
Yeah.
of really dear friends. They are not
Yeah.
social media people. And so he told me this woman's name, the mother of his child. And I looked her up on Facebook, and turned out her and I had a common friend. So I asked that friend, "How do you know so-and-so?" And he said, "Oh my gosh, I haven't seen her in years, but I went to junior school with her." So he messaged her and said, "Hey, my best friend's dating your ex. Is he a good guy?" And she messaged him back and she said, "I don't want to talk about that man. I'm going to let the family court deal with it." But she full on knew he was Jason Porter, and she found stolen
Right.
stuff throughout the house. So, to the benefit of her doubt, I would say she was just in her own trauma. Still, it was all still so fresh for her. And she was navigating family court, trying to take her son away from them and dealing with her own mess. But that response perfectly played in to his version of the story, was that, she never wanted the breakup and she was bitter. And, that
Right.
response perfectly fit into that. But I did reach out to her after the aftermath of everything. And for a while we were in communication, and it was kind of cathartic for a while to be able to talk and
Yeah.
compare stories. And there were so many similarities. However, because of the child and the visitation, which she would do the twice a week visits, she still had to see him and be in contact with him. And my mom and I talked about it. My mom, is a retired neuroscientist, child psychologist who worked her entire career at Sick Kids and in research. And my mom, we just felt it wasn't healthy for me to talk. Yeah, it just, I didn't need to, she would sometimes send me messages like, "He's looking beefy. Like, I wonder if he's on the prowl." And I'm like, how does that help heal? So I feel bad for her sometimes, because I think she's, because of the child, still going to be in some sort of trauma bond. And now with him in jail, she probably has to explain to the son, who this entire time up until he went to jail did see him twice a week and would have multiple FaceTime calls with him. Why is
Wow.
daddy gone? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long is he away for? And is he up for parole at some point soon?
He was sentenced to 2 years less 1 day. So, and he was arrested in April of 2025. I spoke with the parole officer in December because I had learned that he was trying to appeal his sentencing, but that's been revoked. So the earliest he'll get out is, I think, August of 2026. I think
Okay.
you have to do 2/3 of your sentence and then you're eligible to get out.
Yeah.
But hopefully with the other outstanding charges, he'll have more time tacked on. But, the goal of the documentary was to really, on one hand, expose him. So when he does get out, he um, will have a harder time doing this. On Facebook, there's those groups, "Are we dating the same guy?" Have
Yeah.
you ever seen
Yeah.
them? Yeah. So even in January of 2025, when the second trial was supposed to start, and after that first trial went sideways, he manipulated the court system and dragged it out for another year, a whole other year. So in January 2025, on the day that the trial was supposed to start, he did end up pleading guilty. And 2 days after that, I got a notification on Facebook. I was tagged in something and I went, and a woman had posted him in one of those groups that she was supposed to go on a date with him.
Right.
So he never stopped. He never, ever stopped. He is a predator.
Yeah. And a lot of women in these situations, I mean, I haven't been in a situation like this, but definitely where the guy was seeing multiple women, feel shame themselves. So how did you maneuver through that? I did see in the documentary where there was a lot of tears over the guilt with your mom. And
Yeah.
yeah, how did you heal that?
So it's hard. I mean, to this day, I still feel terrible about what he took from my mom. And I know my mom also, like, it's not even for her about the things he stole, the pieces of jewelry, but like even in the documentary, she's like, when, her wedding bands were missing, she's like, she felt like a piece of her marriage was gone,
Right.
and then my dad died. And that was even harder to deal with in a way, that grief. But there's two sides to it. So there's like the mom's guilt, and guilt and shame are different, as you know.
Yeah.
For me, the more deciding to go public with my story allowed me to take that shame and kind of squash it. And it
Yeah.
would try and rear its ugly head. And sometimes I'd be embarrassed, but it's not like I wear it like a badge of honor, but I feel that if I let, if I live in the shame, it gives him my power. It gives the, the fire more fuel.
Right.
And I don't want him to have that hold over me. And I don't even like, I try not to even think about him, the person, or the
Yeah.
memories of my time with him. I just, when those thoughts come in, I just am like, don't take up space in my brain. Like, out you go. But it takes time. In the very beginning, it wasn't even so much the shame in the very beginning. It was more bewilderment. Like, I just couldn't believe that this was my life and this had happened. And then there's I guess some embarrassment and shame are very closely related. I love that Brene Brown book, the Atlas of the Heart, where she really goes into the different emotions,
Yeah.
because there's subtleties and differences. But, embarrassment that at 50, my life fell apart. And most women at 50, when you're leaving a relationship, you're leaving with, hopefully it's a divorce and you've accumulated some assets, and you're leaving kind of
Yeah.
whole. Sometimes what really upset me with the relationship with Jace when it ended was he left the relationship better than he came into it with, whereas I left our relationship with not owning a home, because I sold the condo and we were renting, a backload of debt because he had, taken out these loans for the business that my name was on it, but I thought we were running together because I thought we had this future together. And all the emotional, navigating. I didn't even know I was being emotionally abused. And here I am learning all these like this new language, like things like gaslighting and love bombing and coercive control and future faking and all the things that go along with it. Like, I didn't know that was what was really going on with me. So the shame, kind of like grief, would come up and down, up and down, up and down. But, I did give myself the gift of um, going away. So in my 20s, I started studying Tibetan Buddhism, and I started practicing
Oh, cool.
meditation back in my 20s. And when I was 25, I did this really cool month-long retreat with Pema Chodron up at Gampo Abbey in Cape Breton for a month. It was called Leaving Home and Becoming Homeless. And it was a group of young adults, probably from 18 to 25 or 26, where for 1 month we were temporarily ordained as Buddhist monks and nuns.
Uh,
So I shaved my head and we wore the robe,
wow.
and it was really hardcore, but really, really cool. And even probably about a year ago, I found my old journal from that time. And I have to say, back in when I was much younger, my handprinting was so perfect, like so like legible. And now when I write, it's chicken scrawl. But so I developed tools early on, I guess, about around meditation and self-compassion and all the teachings of Buddhism. So one of the books that's pretty much constantly on my night table is When Things Fall Apart by Pema. And So when this all started falling apart, I gravitated to the lessons, the tools that I already had in my, life backpack, which was one. But I, again, this wasn't just a normal breakup. This wasn't, like learning that your partner cheated on you with somebody, which hurts a lot because I've been there before too. Yeah. This was a kind of pain that almost was so nasty that it was in me, but I almost couldn't really relate to it. I almost became detached from some of that pain. But I'm also lucky too that throughout the whole time this was going on, I had been working with that, doing therapy even before I learned the truth of who he was.
Oh, good.
So I had a professional to help me, and she was very much about, doing things to fill my cup, doing things to nurture myself. So I gave myself the gift of going to Thailand. I went in the winter of 2022, just a few months after this all blew up. I went to Thailand for 2 months because I wanted to go away, and I wanted to go far away where no one knew me. And I didn't have to talk about this, and I could give myself some time and space to think about it and process it. And I, I'm okay being alone. Like I actually wanted to, I had a friend who's like, "Oh, I'll come meet you." I'm like, no, no, no. Like, I really want to do this. Like, I was calling it heel-toned tan, heel, heel-toned tan, kind of like an ode to Eat, Pray, Love. Like, I was going away to just come back refreshed because I knew when I was coming back within weeks the article was going to come out, and they warned me before the article came out that don't be surprised if you get hit up by production companies because it's such a salacious story. So in terms of the shame, it's like I, I guess I would look at it and I would feel it, and I would little bit by little bit just kind of let it go. And simultaneously, the more I started to talk about my story, when the article came out in Channel Life, and then I did some podcasts, and then every time I had a production meeting, I had to relive telling the story because all the producers, they want to hear it. But then from all that, it was also connecting with more victims, more women. And these women are incredible. Like I call them my angel network. Like, I haven't even met all of them. And every now and then one will just call to say hi and check in. And it was even as recent as October of last fall, October 2025, I had a woman call me saying, like, she'd been with him in, I think, 2017, 2016. Out of all the things, she had stolen a ring from her. She's like, "Did you ever see this ring?" I was like, "No, it sounds beautiful. Like, I'm so sorry." It's that sense of, I think, because I did go public and other people coming out, you're not alone in it. Yes. And there's that comfort of probably why when I first reached out to the mother of his child, we were able to connect, because it is a pretty messed up thing to bond with people when we're in. I guess it's kind of like a trauma. You are trauma bonding, but
kind of,
we're also empowering ourselves because we are talking about it in the hopes that maybe more victims still do come forward. But my story isn't unique, and there are going to be other Jasons out there and other women. And I hope this can resonate with people.
Yeah.
And make them not feel like it's their fault to get over the shame.
And what kind of comes up for me is when you said earlier that he didn't do the suicide threat with you, the emotional blackmail kind of thing with you, is probably because he knew that he wouldn't be able to succeed with that you were stronger in that he couldn't get through that to you.
Yeah.
And you were already in therapy, so you already had that kind of connection piece, and you did EMDR. Did you do any other kinds of therapy? Or the travel sounds amazing, but
well, the travel was amazing. I actually went and spent 3 weeks at this place in Koh Samui called Kamalaya, and it's I guess you could say, and I say this very cautiously because I recognize the good fortune that I was able to do this, right? Like, if I had a child, I know I wouldn't have been able to go away for 2 months and let myself heal. Yes, I still had a pile of debt to deal with when I came back, but I was lucky that, through my own means and family, I was able to do this, right? Like I recognize my good fortune, but I went to this world-class resort called Kamalaya, which is a healing place where some people go and, work out with a trainer and they go for diet and fitness, but I was going because I wanted to heal. I wanted to make sense. And so I was there for 3 weeks. And I think I had something like in the 3 weeks I was there, 42 treatments, which included, I had therapy when I was there, and my therapist, what was his name? I forget, but he was Indian Buddhist monk who left the monastery, kind of like Jay Shetty, and then went and became a psychologist. And now so we did talk therapy and then guided meditations to get me, out of my head. But the other treatments included like acupuncture, massages, lymphatic drainage. I remember the first time I was on the acupuncture table, Bernie, the acupuncture guy, he was so cool. He was like, oh my God, like your entire, like, you're just in cortisol overdrive. Like you are shut down on this meridian. And of course I was, because your body, I was like this for months.
Right.
And, and before the truth came out, I spent a month crying myself to sleep every night thinking I had ruined the relationship because he had, picked that fight and then gaslit me and claimed he needed space. All the while, he's completely discarding me already, unbeknownst to me. Like, I didn't know that's what was going on. I thought we were just taking a breather. So, yeah. But I also, when I got back from Thailand, through a woman reached out to me. She read the article, and she's a therapist, and she introduced me to this woman. And I've been practicing regularly Kundalini yoga, and I love it.
I love it. Yes.
Yeah,
It's
I love
amazing.
Kundalini because for me, it ties in, meditation and chanting and movement and release. And it's just wonderful. I love it.
Yeah.
I try to practice at least once or twice a week.
Mm-hmm. I don't do the yoga. I do a Kundalini awakening kind of meditation for women. It's
Sure.
fabulous. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm still waiting to have that Kundalini experience where like the energy just goes right up. But
How about your mom? How is she doing?
she's, my parents were married. They would have had their 58th wedding anniversary they were married on Boxing Day when they were young students. So just this past Boxing Day, they would have had their 58th wedding anniversary. So it's a big loss for her. I lost my dad, but she lost her life partner. In terms of her grief, she's doing quite well. She joined a bereavement group, and she's keeping busy, but she also knows how to check in with her emotions. So there's like the loss of my dad, but I know she's really proud of me, really pleased with the documentary. When he pled guilty, there was a sentencing hearing. So we were both given the opportunity to read our victim impact statements. And the judge, in fact, on that day, my mom did hers by Zoom because she was still down south, but I went in person and read mine in court. And it's the first time I saw him in person in a long time. And he was just such a dark energy and gross. Like I looked at him and just was like, you're just gross. You're a gross human being. And after all of that, the Crown attorney was only asking for 1 year, and his side was asking for house arrest. And the judge actually didn't like that. She's like, I need some time to deliberate. So she came back a few weeks later with her decision. And my mom went in person to court, but I happened to be away, so I couldn't go, but I Zoomed in to watch it. And I think she feels that no amount of time is going to make it right what he did, but at least he did get punished in the eyes of the law.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on having to forgive in order to get past?
That's interesting. Forgiveness that's a hot topic for me. Like that's a hard one. I don't know if I'll ever forgive him for what he did. First, like I don't think I could ever forgive him for stealing my mom's belongings. I don't think he deserves my forgiveness for that. Do I forgive him for betraying me and lying to me? Maybe a little. Like I don't know if he ever actually deserves forgiveness for his actions, but perhaps I can forgive him for the person he is because there's something really wrong with him. And
Right.
maybe he just, like, he obviously can't control himself. So he's
Yeah.
sick. But the thing with his kind of sickness is you can't take a pill to make it better. When you have
Right.
a disorder like psychopathy, sociopath, narcissist, antisocial, it's behavioral.
Yeah.
So, if we're all born like a perfect little soul, or are we? Maybe there just are some bad souls on earth. Like maybe that's where the forgiveness comes. It's bigger than just him, the person. It's like he just is,
Mm.
his soul is rotten. Maybe he isn't a good
Yeah.
person at his core. I don't know, but I don't know if I'll ever like. I guess I just don't dwell on that part of it. Like
Yeah.
my therapist and I talk a lot about radical acceptance. Like I don't have to like what
Yes.
happened, but I have to accept it. And I have gotten there. Like I do accept it's happened.
Yeah.
It's over. I've moved forward. Like it's going on. This happened in 2021. It's going on it'll be 5 years, right? I guess this summer
Yeah.
when everything blew up. So finally, like I'm I took a long time to even want to open myself up to the idea of being with someone. But again, in in Heather world, in my world, I didn't even really have to go looking. Like I happened to meet somebody organically, and he's a wonderful person. And I am now that I'm in a healthy relationship, it's really easy to see all the flaws and red flags that I didn't
Uh,
see when I was in it. And a
yeah.
lot of it comes down to communication. Like when I was with Jace, something was bothering me, or we were trying to have a discussion about the future or something. He he always had this way of I would leave the conversation more confused than I came into it, or he would turn things around. If I asked him something like, why, can we go to the family cottage? Like, why aren't we going to the cottage? He would flip it around and make me feel bad for asking. And that's
Mm.
where the gaslighting is, or the red flag. But when you're in a relationship with a real person, loving, kind person, you can have I like to call them growing conversations, like the conversations that are harder to have because sometimes we just don't all have the right words and sensitivity to get them out.
Yeah.
But when I do have those conversations with my new partner, I'm not clenched by anxiety and fear. Like I'm able to be present and talk to him. And sometimes I get a little tongue tied because I don't even know what I'm trying to say until it starts really coming out. But it's never met with accusations or turning it around to make me feel bad. And I don't feel like I'm ever walking on eggshells.
Right.
Those are all
In a
things I
healthy,
realized.
yeah. In a healthy relationship, we can talk about our feelings and know that we're not going to be rejected for them.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I was curious, and I know I said I wasn't going to go into the whole story of it, but I was so curious because I'm part of my background is lifespan development. And so I kept wondering, like, what happened to him to make him this way? So, did you ever, was there a connection with his family? Do you know them? Do you kind of understand that kind of?
So Jean, the journalist, when she was doing her story, she reached out to all whatever family members she could find, and nobody wanted to talk to him. I did connect with his first wife, who's mentioned in the Toronto Life story, and we met in person once. And she, to this day, is actually still in contact with his brother and sister in law. I don't think frequently, but I don't know if anyone knows what happened to him to make him rotten. I do know that his mom did pass away when he was, I think it would have been 18. His parents divorced, and his mom, when he was quite maybe 7 or 8, met a man who he really took to. And then that man died. He had a brain aneurysm when Jace, I think, would
Okay.
have been 10. And I think maybe what might have happened was his own mom didn't know how to deal with her grief, let alone Jace's grief. And I think Jace got sent away to live with his dad, who was, I think, a little on the abusive side. And I think just that's in his youth, he started just getting mixed up. But, that's a bigger question. Is this are these people born this way, or is it from something that happens? I think it's a bit of both.
Usually.
Yeah.
Usually there's a predisposition, right?
Right.
And yeah.
So then
That's
is it
interesting.
genetic? Would that make any of his kids predisposed to it?
Well, I think, this is just my opinion, but I think that we have a predisposition to a whole bunch of different things, but it's also
Right.
how we're taught how to cope, how we're given attachment. It's about connection. I mean, connection is really everything, right? Connection with
Yeah.
ourselves and others, and yeah, safety in the nervous system as well.
Yeah. Probably something happened to him when he was younger that just set him off. But, when he was divorcing his wife, they had 2 boys. And this was before he was arrested as the online Romeo, or during that whole time. And he, they, the court ordered a psychiatric evaluation. And Jane, the journalist, was able to get that through the court records, and they're like the whole thing. And he lied to the therapist. He's when he was sentenced in April of this year, the judge she basically said, "You're a menace to society. You're smart. I'm not going to, even though you have said in the pre-sentencing report that the parole officer did that you'd be open to therapy." She goes, "I'm not going to waste limited resources on giving you therapy because it's not going to work." But she did, I don't know if it was ordered or recommended, another psychiatric evaluation. But the thing is, he knows how to lie and manipulate. So, he could just lie to a therapist.
Yeah,
Although I
especially if
do
it's
think
like a 2-hour assessment, right?
right. But I do think today in 2026 versus probably like 2010 when he had that other one, even within the mental health professional community, people talk more about the disorders, like just the narcissism and the psychopathy. Like it's more du jour, if you will.
Yes,
So
this is
maybe
true.
he wouldn't be able to pull the wool over their eyes as easily. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe they're
And we
better
do
genetics.
understand there's more understanding about neuroscience and all of the above.
Mhm.
What are some non-negotiables for your day so that you feel healthy and connected? And
Well, I love every day I walk the dogs, like
Mhm.
at least getting out for a good hour walk. I try to every morning, I have my little mini routine, which is just a little meditating, a little journaling. And I just try to be kind to myself. Like to be honest, being a real estate broker, and now I'm also working on my book. I have one great thing about the documentary is I actually was really fortunate. I have signed with a literary agency, so I'm working on my memoir, which is really fun. It's harder than I thought to write, but it's really rewarding. Um, I I guess I'm trying to say I don't have like a 9 to 5 job, so I have a pretty flowy lifestyle, and I like that. Like I've always liked that. But I just try to like get enough sleep, and I love going to the gym, and I talk to my mom almost every day. So yeah, I try to practice gratitude and just be grateful for where I'm at.
Yeah. What would you say to women as a message or warning or something to watch for? Is there any kind of major warning signs for them or some advice if they've just discovered?
I think there's that old adage, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. So if you're dating somebody in the beginning and they're coming on fast and furious, and within days, weeks, you know, they're like, I love you, let's get married. Like they're throwing it all in. I would definitely go slow. I think there's nothing wrong with ever going slow. And I think if somebody's rushing you, that's the love bombing. Like they're trying to make you so confused because they need to get in there to derail your brain. I also think that it's such a fine line, you know, because I know since the documentary came out, I've run into friends that are like, oh my God, I always thought there was something off about him, but I didn't know it until, you know, I think we all need to, friend or person in the relationship, really do not ignore your intuition, those feelings, like, because there were times through, I told this story to somebody the other day, and I'll tell it to you because it's not in the documentary. There was this time, so it was July when everything blew up. In April, because I have a text message I sent a friend after this happened. We were in our bedroom, and Jace came out of the shower, and he was wearing a towel. And he came and he pushed me down on the bed. And normally I would have been like, okay, baby, like, yeah, let's, you know, let's make out. And he was on top of me. And all of a sudden I was like lying there. I was like, I felt this like this feeling of like claustrophobia, like, and I was panicking and I was like pushing on his chest and I was like, get off me, get the fuck off me. I remember screeching like that. And the look on his face was like, in the moment, like I felt like I hurt his feelings because I was like, why am I rejected? Like I was literally like, get off me. I remember crying and he left and in a bit of a huff and I called a girlfriend and I was crying saying like, I don't know what just happened to me. Like I freaked out, you know, like our sex life hasn't been so great lately. And he's trying to like, you know, be romantic with me and I freaked out. I think that was my body and my intuition telling me early on, like something's not right, Heather, something like, but I was so disconnected. Like I felt bad after I did that. I didn't stop to think, hey, maybe this is like something else. And it would take months till then the truth really came out. But I think early on, my body was giving me some warnings to stop, like that something wasn't right, you know?
And the fact that he left instead of comforting you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Like he turned it around again and like
Yeah.
use it as another reason to gaslight and get pissed off. Like, how dare you do that? So I think there's like this low grade feeling when I think back now that I've had a lot that just was like something doesn't, like, even with the child custody, like the family court stuff, it just never made sense to me that how could it be dragged out for so long? Like I didn't understand. And then I would, you know, I had some friends who went through major divorces and I know they can take years. And I knew the family court was dismantled, like, or had to pivot with COVID. But there was sometimes I was like, this just doesn't make sense. Like, and I think if you are in a relationship and you're starting to question yourself, that's a really good time to take a big pause and really ask yourself why.
Yeah. That's so
Because
important.
the
The questioning of yourself.
yeah, because the manipulator, the con man, they're just going to keep lying to you. They've got their routine down right. So you're not going to get the validation or the answers you need from them. So you need to start asking yourself, like, this isn't what love is supposed to feel like. Like, why, you know? And then that's where the shame also would come in. It's like, did I want a relationship that badly that what did I ignore? Like, what had I been not seeing for all those years? That's in a way what's more shameful than, in some ways, than being actually conned, was the con I, in a way, was pulling on myself that I wasn't aware. And with like, and I told you, like, it's not like I wasn't an aware person. I prided myself in being spiritual and meditative and doing therapy. And yet that's how good he was, that I wasn't able to see it. I got glimpses of it, but then, you know, he would reassure me with grandiose gestures and huge words of affirmation that everything was okay.
Right. Yeah.
So it was
Words
very
rather than
confusing.
actions. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the body never lies, but intuition can be so quiet sometimes that we listen to what's louder. And sometimes that's people's voice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. What's next for you? So the book? Uh,
Basically, the book, and I'm hoping. Yeah, I love going on podcasts because I love talking about the story. And I really would love to do more advocacy work, like whether that's turns into some public speaking. Like I'd love to get in front of members of parliament and share my story, or police and share my story, because I do think some things need to change. You know, in October, I was fortunate. I got to go to London, England, and I was at the City of London police are so much further ahead than our crime departments here. They actually have an entire romance fraud department,
oh,
and
wow.
they had a symposium called Date Safe, and it was cops and detectives and bankers and people from the dating apps and some victims, and we all, shared our stories and had questions and answers. And it was a really interesting day. In my talk that I gave, I said something like, to the law enforcement here today, know how you respond to a victim can change the course of their life. Because
Yeah.
the first time I called the police and they came to the house prior to the 911 call, I had asked for a restraining order and they laughed at me. And they asked me that day, they're like, well, has he ever hurt you? And I remember so clearly saying, physically? And they said, yes. And I thought for a minute, because in my mind, I was thinking, in the documentary, there's all this tickling videos.
Yeah.
And I was like, why? Like, well, no, he hasn't hurt me on purpose. But all those times he would sit on me and tickle me, and he would video it, which is
Yeah.
so sadistic. And he says that to my mom sometimes. My mom's like, you're hurting her. Like, she's like, I find this disturbing. Like, why would you send
Right.
those to my mom? That's where he's such a sick individual, but he was hurting me.
Right.
But
But it's
I asked
so
them, like,
hard to say that I'm being hurt by being tickled, right?
yeah,
Mm.
because I kind of mistook it for just like roughhousing, like love play. Like, it's like kind
Mm.
of how our banter, our shtick, like it's how we
Yeah.
flirt. But, people say like a piece of a restraining order doesn't always work. Like, but in that very day, if I had like the course of events could have gone very differently had the police that very first day kind of listened to me and helped me instead of
Right.
basically saying, well, there's nothing we can do.
Right. Yeah.
And that's where I hope no one is ever in my shoes again,
Yeah.
because it was terrifying and traumatizing. For the documentary, I had to, through the Freedom of Information Act, I had to get the 911 call and all the police reports. And that the night of the 911 call, I read the police report that accompanied that. And I'm in surging with adrenaline and I'm in shock and I'm terrified. And I'm probably a little speedy. And in the police report, they kept saying Heather was really rude. She kept talking over us. She wouldn't let us finish our sentences because I kept saying, how is this happening? How are you? I'm getting arrested. You want to arrest me? Like, I don't know. I was so out of my mind, and they didn't have the knowledge or experience how to deal with somebody like that. And
Yeah.
that's where some changes need to be made. Like, okay, maybe it's never going to be against the law for what he did to me. But like, at least if a woman calls the police who are supposed to serve and protect, a little training and compassion to deal with
Yeah.
the person. By the
Yeah.
time I had the York Region Police eventually had someone from Victim Services reach out to me, but I'm like, well, there's nothing you can do for me now. Like, I don't need
Not in.
thanks,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Kingston
so
has a mobile crisis unit, and two people usually will go with the police on a lot of calls. And I feel like every city needs to integrate that into the system, because then there's like a social worker who's trained with trauma and
right,
could have helped you ground in the moment before
yeah.
being asked all those questions, right?
I'd love to do that. I mean, I don't have the desire at this point in my life to go back to school and get educated to be a social worker or a therapist.
Yeah.
but I feel like I could be really helpful
Yeah.
to anyone who's gone through anything hard. I mean, one day my partner and I, we were talking, and he was like, you know what? How do you think you could help? And yeah, maybe I should try and volunteer on some sort of help
Yeah.
hotline to like talk
Yeah.
people through their hard times, because
Yeah.
there's times where you just need to talk and to have somebody who's not going to judge you, listen. And it's not even like somebody can tell you what to do. You just need to like talk. Cause sometimes, as you know, like the more we hear our own voice come out, sometimes you're like, oh, we're finding that's what therapy's all about. Like you're talking out loud and you're finding the answers through the conversation. But my
Yeah.
therapist is never going to tell me what to do.
Right. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's more about connecting the body and the emotion and the
Yeah.
thoughts
So
together.
I really want to help people. I also love the idea of, because I like traveling so much, maybe down the road trying to organize healing inspired retreats for women who have, are going or have gone through trauma, just to like, there's power in numbers, right? And women love to bond. And like, I think that could be kind of satisfying. But in the meantime, just, still doing some real estate, still writing my book. As I told you early on, I'm heading down this weekend to spend a bit of time with my mom down south. And I always joke, we're like half of the Golden Girls. Me and my mom.
They were actually very young, the Golden Girls, when you
I
look at it
know.
now. Yeah.
I know.
How can people find you?
Well, I have a website, heatherrovet.com. And also just I'm on Facebook and Instagram and a little LinkedIn. And that's probably the easiest way, is through social media.
Okay. Perfect. Well, thank you so much. It was
Thank
very
you.
lovely to talk and to hear
Yes.
how
Very
far you've come.
interesting conversation. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
a journey.
Yeah.
It is a journey. And like somebody, I think it was my mom, I said something about healing. She's like, aren't you healed? Wouldn't have actually been my mom who said that, but somebody's like, aren't you healed yet? I'm like, I think it's an ongoing thing. Like it's layers, right? Like the deeper
Yeah.
you get to know yourself, the deeper you go.
Yeah.
I am so glad I'm empathetic and able to talk about my emotions, because when they talk about the narcissistic people and the psychopaths, and, when they say they have no empathy, I don't understand. I'm like, how can they not feel? How can they not care? That's impossible. But they don't, So
It's
yeah.
also usually why they're attracted to people like you that have that much empathy, because then they can feed off of it and see it.
Yeah. They really are like vampires, aren't they?
Mm.